Welcome everyone to our episode 128. In today's episode, we are going to speak and talk and reflect about the power of the quantum mind. That's the title of our episode. And we are going to see all of these quantum phenomena that surround us with different layers of first of our beliefs and then of the consciousness. We are going to go deeper into the archetypes that Carl Jung uh, discovered, structure, and specified how many of us, many times, we use these masks to cover who we really are. And the purpose of this episode is to discover your true self and to understand the different energy systems that are controlling sometimes, that are regulating, that are also in charge of many of the communication processes from the cell systems to the organs, to the tissues, to all of this complex communication between the different kind of, um, let's say, our highways, our the power of regulating consciousness, the power of regulating cognition, everything that is happening inside of you that is related to energy. And we are going to finally discover why we are light. In fact, we are bioelectronic systems regulated by light, by biophotons. And that's why uh, many of these processes that they were ancient, but now we are discovering how they regulate, like meditation, start allowing us to discover who we really are and becoming the creators that we were meant to be. So, all of those things we are going to reflect about this uh, episode is based on a article that I wrote about the power of the quantum mind, the same name, and it's based on the archetypes and the collective unconscious of Carl Jung in the light of quantum psychology. That's the article that I used to discover all of this information from 2011. So what is happening in our lives? Are we ready, or are you ready to confront the uncomfortable truths and discover your true self, discover the nucleus of yourself, and start working with all those emotions? In our fast paced world, it is sometimes complex to find time for reflection that many times seems impossible. And that's the most common excuse of many people. I don't have time. And if you keep repeating that, as I have mentioned in previous episodes, that is going to be your reality. You won't have time for anything. That's why you need to start doing time for yourself. Allowing unconscious behaviors to control us limits our growth. That's why we need to peel those layers. There is no simple fix, there is no instantaneous change, and this requires that you know yourself much better. True change requires an evolution process. It is something that is going to keep changing. It is your unique journey of courage and introspection. Allow yourself to peel these layers of your program behaviors, and that's going to make your life so much easier because you will notice, you will be aware, you will have consciousness of what are you doing. So I summarize all this information in 5 key points that will really uh, lead you by the hand in terms of knowing what is happening with your inner self, with your true self. So the first one is, what is the impact of the unconscious beliefs. And to talk about this, I use this image where you can really know or see what was used by Jung and by many psychologists to explain how our mind is or resembles of an iceberg. And this has three main layers. This is the impact of the unconscious beliefs in our lives. And as you can see, the deeper layer, or the one that is most, let's say, buried inside of us, is the unconscious mind. And that accounts for 30 to 40% of our beliefs. Next is the subconscious mind, and that allows for 50 to 60%. If you make this, if you just add these numbers, more or less 80% or more than 80 is controlled by the unconscious and the subconscious mind. So that just left you with 10% of the conscious awareness of what you are doing in your life. That's why if you want to increase that percentage of you and you want to have more control and regulation and much better awareness of what you are doing, then you need to start reflecting on your life. You start peeling these layers. You need to start knowing yourself much. And how can you do that? How can you start uncovering these layers? Well, one thing that you can do, one strategy is mindfulness. Practicing mindfulness, practicing meditation, being more aware of your actions, of the patterns, having more time to self reflect, having more time to leave your mind to wander so that you know what are the kind of thoughts, what are the kind of emotions that you are cultivating, that is going to help you to bring unconscious patterns and conscious awareness of what are you doing, and that will unlock your personal growth and self-awareness. The more you uh, go deep into the traumas, into the beliefs, into the things that many times are not phrases or things that you are doing in your life, all of those uh, dialogues that you can have, the inner critic that many times is judging you, many of those voices are not yours. Many of those voices are from your parents, probably from your caregivers, from teachers, from even friends from the childhood stage. And many of those phrases are the ones that are stuck in your mind and you repress them. So we need to uncover this by reflection, by meditation, by mindfulness. Next, what is the next idea that I want to convey to you is the layers of consciousness. All of these layers of consciousness, we talk about these layers first of your beliefs, and now we have also layers in the process of consciousness. And this was the topic that Carl Jung really was an expert on, and he started designing these concepts of the self, which is your true being, your true, it is also your soul, and it is how you know your desires, your emotions that are deep inside of you. And from there, from that nucleus, you will have these layers. The first lay or the first layer, sorry, it's the ego and it's the shadow. And we have in the upper level the ego, in the lower level the shadow. Why? Why do we have these two sides of this story of the layers? because the layers that go to the ego, to the persona, and outer world refer to how we move in our lives according to the expectations of people, according to um, what society approves, what the program that was installed by society and by the multiple person multiple people that were in your life contribute with. So all of that, all of those layers in the upper part of this diagram refer to those expectations, to that program of the society. The deeper layers is the shadow first, and the shadow refers to the complex um, being of you that is many times the part that is dark, the part that is not shown to society. These are all of these things that sometimes you are ashamed of. Sometimes you just show those behaviors when you are under deep stress, when you are in an argument, when you are pressure, or when you are in your lowest states of feeling, emotionally feeling that you are probably anxious, probably desperate, or depressed. That shadow is going to come up to the surface on those circumstances. And many times we need to know what is inside there, because the shadow is also accompanied by many of the deep traumas from your childhood experiences, many of the emotions that you repressed when you were a child, many of the things that you, um, even thoughts that you have when you were suffering this kind of trauma. And then deeper in these layers, we encounter the anima or animus in plural, and that is sort of your soul. Those are the deeper desires that you have to uh, make your life different to many of these anima, or this that kind of layer is constructed by conscious and unconscious behaviors that you have been carrying generation after generation. And that's why it is extremely important that you know what was the life of your ancestors. That's why you need to start interviewing your parents, your grandparents, if they are alive, or if not, through your parents, you can know the story of one or two generations behind. And that's the process of curiosity that you should have about yourself, and that you should start promoting, cultivating, fostering, because the more you know these kind of behaviors, the more you know all of these bonds, all of these attachments that you have towards certain repetitive patterns, toxic emotions. That's when you are going to understand, and that's when you are going to release many of these things that you have from those generations. So these layers of consciousness is our personality, and those layers form, including the conscious level, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. All of those are constructing your personality and how you behave in the world. And knowing this, understanding and integrating these layers through introspection, through psychological techniques that can be hypnosis, that also through these levels of meditation, you can explore and exploring more archetypes. Archetypes, we are going to go next to explain that, are masks. In simple words, they are masks that we anytime use. They are ways of behaving, and they are strong attached to the society, to the culture, to how we behave, to what we see, what we perceive from the things that we are imbuing in our mind. And exploring these archetypes will will allow you a balance and an integrated self, because you will know all of these layers through or from the inner world to the anima, to the shadow, passing through yourself. And then you will notice more your ego. The ego is this layer that many times we construct to uh, appear in a certain way to the society, to appear in a certain way to the people that are watching us, the people that are listening to us, even to our children. Many times we let our ego um, go into that direction, and the more we allow that ego to control our lives, the worst you will have uh, influence over your children, because you will show them that many times it's more important what other people think than what you want. And that's extremely hurtful, and can be extremely hurtful for many people, can be extremely limiting in terms of not being yourself, in terms of always behaving according to what people want, according to a diplomatic way of being, according to certain rules that sometimes we need rules, of course, we need a structure, but sometimes many of those rules don't help you to behave in the way you should, to behave in the way you want, to behave in the way your desires and everything that you are is wanting to express. And then you form also this persona. And this persona is even worse sometimes, because that's how you um, play with these some archetypes, with these masks. And that's why it is close to the outer world, because this persona is who you are, just in terms of how people see you, but not the true self. This is deep inside of these layers, and this is this protection, this wall that many people construct, this certain kind of personality that certain people also build in order to be functional in certain situations. And that doesn't mean that you should um, stop following every rule. That doesn't mean to be a rebel, that we are going to see that this is an archetype also. This just means that the more you know yourself, the easier this ego and this persona are going to be dissolved, and you are going to be more functional with your true self. You're going to be more unique, more authentic to the world, instead of behaving according to what other people want. So that's how you start peeling this layer, integrating this, and knowing more who you are, and dissolving these um, walls, these behaviors, these sometimes, many times, actions that we perform either consciously or unconsciously, and that they are controlling us. They are keeping us stuck. They are not allowing us to grow, to expand, to release, to unlock our potential, because we feel judged, because we feel seen, because we feel vulnerable. And that's not who you are. That's just something that you constructed through your childhood experiences, through the pain, through the trauma, through all of those things that you suffer. And you start noticing from other people and following those examples. So, next, once you know this, once you allow yourself to dissolve, once you allow to yourself to also know your dark side and how it comes or how it can be triggered by certain behaviors, actions, rules, or people, then it is easier to regulate all of those emotions. Then it is easier to know who you really are. And then we arrive to these 12 archetypes by Carl Jung. And this is the next idea, the role of the archetypes. What is the idea of these? Archetypes are these universal symbols that I will call them more masks within this collective unconscious that influence our behavior and our personality. And they allow us sometimes to behave in certain ways that can be functional and that can help us to regulate, let's say, or to play more with who we really are. And for example, we have here the this archetype that is called the innocent. Sometimes we play that role when the goal is just to be happy. For example, when we are children, the flaws of this, for example, this archetype is that you are too trusting or too naive. And some people can take advantage of that archetype. And that's why some people take advantage of children, because you are open minded, because you are innocent, because you are uh, trusting everyone. And then we have another example that is extremely popular in many movies, in many books, and this is the hero. The hero, the goal is to belong, and the flaws of this archetype is need to fight. The skill is the courage. Many times when you use this archetype, you feel that you need to be fighting against someone. And that can also be counterproductive for your life, because you don't really need to fight against anyone. Being or trying to be the hero in every situation means sometimes that you uh, don't care about what other people feel, don't care about what other people do, and you only want more and more. You become ambitious. So using too much this is also deleterious for your life. So what is the function of these archetypes then? We all play these 12 roles in our lives in many situations and many stages of our lives. Every role has a purpose or a goal, as it is depicted in this image. And it is good to use it in a certain part of your life and in a certain moment, but it is also useful to know yourself, to know these layers that we spoke about just before, and when you know your true self and you are using this type of mask, it just becomes like a character that you are using. You are not being used by the archetype. When you are used by the archetype, you lose yourself in this archetype and you don't recognize what you are doing, and you can damage a lot of people. So that's why it is dangerous to use this mask too much time. You can use them as a strategy. You can use them to do what you have to do sometimes. And once you obtain those things or the objectives that each of these archetypes fulfill, then it's gone and you become yourself again. They are not bad if you don't overuse them. They are not bad if you don't attach to any of them. They are not bad if you understand what is the purpose and where do they come from. As I mentioned, they are universal symbols that the collective is everyone from every era, from every century, contributed to form the personality of these archetypes. But that will influence your behavior and that will influence your personality. But if you know yourself good, if you have done the work, if you have peeled the layers, you will know that you are using these things just for a certain purpose, and then you become yourself again. You play with these roles. That is the purpose of many of these roles. For example, you can use the creator, and the goal is to realize a vision. We are creators, and many times this role is extremely helpful because we need to uh, create this vision of our life. We need to create this dream that we want to achieve. And by creating that dream, we are going to become happier, let's say, for a moment in time. But if you obsess with this, the flaw or the extreme of this archetype is becoming a perfectionist. And that will neglect your creativity, your curiosity. You will become stuck in certain patterns of your life because you will be so perfectionist that you won't allow the growth to happen. You won't be open minded, you will be closed. So any of these roles has to be handled with imagination. That's the skill of the creator. You need to be conscious that you are using any of these archetypes, any of these masks, and you are just using it to fulfill the goal. That's it. That's the purpose of this game, let's say. What is the application or how can you use these archetypes? Recognizing and working with these archetypes will allow you to gain insights into personal and collective experiences, and you will be able to foster self knowledge and emotional well being. Because when you use any of these masks and you know that you are using it, you have certain purpose, you fulfill the purpose, and you allow yourself to unlock some potential by using this kind of mask, by using this kind of archetype, and then you discard the archetype, but you become yourself, your true self. Next, we are moving on to the quantum processes in biology and how all of these psychological knowing, all of this psychological theory, and all of this work that you are doing with your psychology, with your emotions, with your feelings, with your ancestors, with everything that happened, how does everything, how do everything relates to this kind of knowledge of quantum processes? Well, turns out that everything that we do in our lives is controlled by energy, by small particles. And the way the cells communicate is by creating these um, communication systems with different kind of uh, another type of cells, another type of tissues, another type of organs, and then by constructing this communication, we can create a realm. For example, in this case, the microbiome. But if we allow ourselves to have a healthy communication between ourselves, if we nurture ourselves with consciousness, then we create a healthy microbiome. That microbiome, in turn, will produce certain substances and certain chemical neurotransmitters, such as dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, etc. And many of these chemical messengers are going to impact your mind. And by impacting these, you will have a different profile of emotions if you have a microbiome that is different. And we know now this, and this is the importance of the quantum processes in biology, that you understand that everything is linked from the communications of your cells to creating a good balance or homeostatic environment in your tissues, in your organs, in your systems. You allow yourself a good quality production of neurotransmitters, of hormones, and that will give you a much better, a much clean, a much clearer quality of mental processes. And by having that, you will be able to reflect in your life to understand much better. If you are confused, if your microbiome, if your cells are not communicating in a structured, coherent way, and you are having erratic patterns, or you are being unconscious in the way you eat, and you are just allowing your body to be filled with toxins, with artificial food, with all of these processed chemicals, then you are disrupting this communication. By disrupting the communication of the cells, you disrupt the communications of tissues, you disrupt the communications of organs, and you create a toxic environment of the microbiome. You deplete the good bacteria, you start growing toxic bacteria, and you become ill. You develop a disease, and when you have those diseases, the profile of your neurotransmitters, the profile of many of these messengers becomes toxic. And by doing that, you create turmoil in your life. Whenever we feel that those kinds of emotions, then that's when we develop anxiety, depression, and many other mental diseases. That's why it is important to understand that every frequency that we are liberating in these quantum processes is impacting another system, a bigger system. For example, we also have here oxygen. By allowing our body to have a good oxygenation process, by protecting ourselves from these free radicals, we enhance the action of the mitochondria. And these powerhouses will allow our cells in all of our body to activate certain processes that are called apoptosis. By allowing a process that is in correct communication with the coherent liberation of these molecules of oxygen, these particles of oxygen, we will have healthier mitochondria, and we will allow the cells to activate these apoptosis signals. And this apoptosis means that when a cell knows that it is not functional anymore, when it is old, let's say, it becomes like a zombie cell. Literally, they are called like that. And these zombie cells, when they are destroyed, when they have these apoptotic signals in correct place, then you will have these nutrients that can be recycled. When you don't allow this process to happen and these cells don't know when do they have to be self-destroyed, let's say, they become tumorogenic, and then you start creating cancerous processes. This is just an example. But many of these diseases start with these incoherent, erratic patterns of energy, of light, because we are light, because we are bioelectronic devices that work in a certain coherent way. Anytime we deviate from that coherent way of being, that's the time when you allow the chaos, the entropy to start destroying many of the processes. And then if you keep continuing in that uh, pathway, in that direction, you create a disease. You created the disease. It is not it is not spontaneous. Diseases are not spontaneous. Many diseases, if not all, every time we advance science, we prove that more than 90% of the diseases are self created. And they are self created either by you or by the unconscious layers that you have not been reflecting on, because you also have this epigenetic memory. And that epigenetic memory is going to help you, well, to know these processes, to know these erratic patterns, and to clean them. But if you are not cleaning these patterns, if you are just keeping this information stock, you are becoming unconscious, you are becoming reactive, you are just living completely like a zombie. Literally, you are creating disease in your life. You become like these cancerous cells. You start creating disease over disease, symptom over symptom. And what do you do externally? You just take a pill and you think that a pill will help you to fix the disease, but that doesn't happen. That will happen momentarily, but eventually you will get sick again because you didn't treat the root cause, because you didn't go all the way to these quantum processes. And you don't need to be an expert. So you just need to understand the layers of your beliefs, the layers of your consciousness, how you are playing with these archetypes, because being stuck in one archetype is also having those patterns, toxic patterns, be repetitive. That's how you start relating all of these things. Quantum processes allow cells to store and transfer information that will impact health and behavior. But if we are storing good information, coherent information, helpful information, then we impact in a healthy way the behavior of the system, of the cells, of the communication process, and we are healthy in general. Exploring this quantum psychology, because this is the level, the deepest level of the psychology processes, will allow you to understand the bioelectronic nature of the body. Because as I mentioned, many of these processes are becoming, or they start by photons. And now science knows that this pattern of photons in the cells that can be measured now, and we can know also, as much as we know now, how the heart has coherent waves of um, beating, we also know now what is a coherent pattern of a biophotonic process. And we can recognize and use these tools to prevent diseases. When we detect a cell, and that is the level that we are going to arrive very soon, if not already, we are there. Analyzing the patterns of these biophotonic processes will allow detecting cells that are not communicating in a coherent way and will allow to prevent a disease before it becomes chronic or becomes it expresses in your body. That is the significance of these biophotons. That is the significance of understanding how life, how these processes of quantum start, um, how they start and how they gather themselves, how they contribute to many, many upper level processes, upper level diseases, and just to understand much better this process, let's just analyze this example that is depicted in this image. Let's say that you see this object, which is a regular, non-coherent, and it has light waves. These light waves reflection, and how do you see this object that can be, let's say, if it says non-coherent, let's use the example of news. Let's say that you are watching news and you are watching all the display of things, all these passes through your eyes, light wave reflections from this object that is the TV set are converted into electrical signals in the right retina. This goes to the optic nerve fibers. This travels to the optic chiasma and then travels through the optic tract. It arrives to the nucleus, to the lateral geniculate nucleus. These are just technical names, but just follow me in the process that is being communicated, this light, and it is being translated into signals. And you then have an intrinsic computational picture that can be uh, translated by the mitochondrial bioluminescent photons and the neurons that are there in these retinotopic V1 neurons. These neurons are going to translate this information and they are going to generate neuroelectrical signals converted into biophotons by radical redox processes within the mitochondria in the neurons. And this biophoton wave will inform the mitochondria. If the information is toxic, like this example we chose by watching the news, what do you think is going to happen with the mitochondria? They are going to be filled with free radicals. They are going to be filled with toxic information. If instead you allow yourself to witness different things, to start being more conscious of the information that you are consuming through your eyes, through your senses in general, the information that will travel will be a lot healthier and will create these bioelectric signals that are coherent. By creating this, you will allow the mitochondria to have a healthier environment, and you will allow the neurons in your mitochondria the neurons in your mitochondria, no, the neurons to have a profile of communication that is healthier, that is going to create a homeostatic environment. And by creating this environment, you allow yourself to have clean expression of your proteins. That's the level that you can arrive. Biophotons are light particles that are emitted by your DNA, and they play a crucial role in cellular communication and in health. So, what is the application of knowing these biophotons? Well, the study of these emissions as potential diagnostic tools, as I mentioned before, for early disease detection and monitoring cellular health, coherent communication patterns, recognizing that we are an up to the level of the cells, interconnected with all the biological systems, and we create a symphony, an orchestra that is well directed toward health, not directed toward disease, not unconscious. Even at the level of your senses, even at the level of what you see, what you hear, what you taste, how you feed yourself, and of course, touch, the social part is extremely important, but it all contributes to the way you are creating the environment in your life. This is how we can deconstruct all this information from the emotions, from the feelings, from our ancestors, up to the level of the particles. This is why this more or less new science is called quantum psychology, because we understand the processes up to the level of the biophotons, up to the level of the communication between cells, up to the level of these systems that are creating coherent patterns or incoherent patterns. That depends on what you are witnessing in your life. And that's why the reflection process is extremely important, because if you detect one toxic behavior in your life, you can make changes. If you behave unconsciously, if you don't have time, if you are not reflecting in your life and you are just living through the program, well, the easiest way you think is consuming pills. And by consuming all of those things, you are just creating more disease and more damage, even for future generations, because we explain that, because we also know the epigenetic changes that many of these toxic substances will create. So that's how you understand the quantum mind, because the mind is that controls all of these processes. Let's call this mind yourself, your true self. And that's the power of being conscious, that's the power of the nucleus of your consciousness, and that's the power of understanding yourself up to the level of the communication that you are having in yourselves. I hope that I have triggered a lot of curiosity for you to read more, to read the whole article that I wrote, and to review this video again and again until you understand how everything in ourselves is connected and how we impact by the level of our thoughts, by the level of the perception of our senses, by the level of the things that we are consuming with our senses, up to the communication of each of the cells, creating a better communication between tissues, creating a better communication between organs, creating a much better system, and creating coherent, healthy patterns in our emotions and in our lives. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that I have inspired you to know more about yourself, to peel these layers, to interview your parents, to know more better about your grandparents and the toxic behaviors that they have, and everything that you can uncover to know better how you are behaving in your life. Thank you very much for listening. We will listen to each other on our next episode. And as always, I encourage you to follow me first, to subscribe in my YouTube channel, to leave me a review in the different platforms in Spotify or in Apple Podcast or in YouTube, of course, and help me to process and to send this information to more people so that we understand that we are holistic beings. We are not separated. We are understanding more and more that we are a complex mixture of the five pillars of health. Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we will listen to each other on our next episode. Bye.